Welcome to Season 7 of Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. In this show, we talk to leaders of clubs and interesting folks who live in and around the villages. We also talk to people who have information vital to seniors. You will get perspectives of what is happening in the Villages, Florida area. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters.
This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. I'm here today with Dr. Christopher Missling. He is the president of and CEO of Anavex Life Sciences and has over 25 years of health care industry experience with large pharmaceutical and biotech industry. Thanks for joining me, Christopher.
Thanks for having me.
Good. Christopher's work is dedicated to finding potential treatments for degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, as well as diseases in the autism spectrum by utilizing precision medicine. Dr. Missling is working with a team to advance new, potential convenient oral treatments, the inclusion of their respective stakeholders and groups. Dr. Missling has an MS and a PhD in chemistry and an MBA from Northwestern University Kellogg School of Management. Dr. Missling, in that introduction, I used a couple of words which our audience needs to understand. What is precision medicine?
Somebody has a certain feature and of genetic background or grows up with a certain feature, that some have a very good response compared to others who don't have that feature. And in oncology, it's mostly well known that expression, but it's relatively new in central nervous systems. But we have found very clear data and evidence that also in central nervous systems and diseases of the brain, you can also apply these precision medicine approaches, which means certain patients identified with a genetic background respond extremely well to the drug.
Okay. And why don't you tell our listeners the way you see it, what the current landscape of Alzheimer's disease is?
Alzheimer's disease is really very complex, and we should not underestimate this because we have been really good at advancing medicine in every field. We can replace hip, we can replace a knee, we can make surgery on kidneys and on lungs and even on the heart. But the brain is the only organ where we just have not been able to get a way through because it's so complex. But there's a huge need because Alzheimer is directly correlating with aging. So the older you get, the more likely you get Alzheimer. Mm-hmm. And we also understand for that reason that we want to stay sharp and be ourselves with dignity for a long life. And why we understand there's a huge unmet medical need still there because there are no drugs out there right now which can help us in addressing this horrible disease. This is further highlighted by recent setbacks also from other companies, including large pharma companies, with the GLP-1 agonist like Novo Nordisk or an anti-tau injectable from Johnson, which both failed recently, and it shows a lack of upcoming pipeline and products potentially coming to market.
That was where the GLP-1 drugs failed to show any progress in halting or reversing Alzheimer's. Am I right?
That's right, yeah. There was not even a hint of improvement or even a hint of any change.
What do you think the outlook for finding a preventative or a cure for Alzheimer's is?
It makes it more difficult, but we have really, I want to point out that we have found a program in our approach that is more upstream to the pathology than previously identified, which is restoring what we refer to the body's own ability to regenerate cells which are impaired if they are getting down the line of pathology. And that process is called autophagy restoration. And our drug is able to restore this. And that is where we think that could be a new approach emerging in this very difficult environment.
And why don't you tell our listeners what the name of that drug is?
The drug name is Blarcamesine, and it's an orally once daily tablet or pill, which would be taken once daily orally. Very simple and convenient for the patient, convenient also for the families, for the caregivers. And the patient doesn't have to go anywhere to get it, and it can be prescribed and shipped to the patient directly. And it's also convenient to the physician. The physician does not have to do many tests and does not have to coordinate. But after one visit, he can prescribe this drug once it's approved, of course.
Sure. And what stage of studies or approval is it in?
We completed a phase 2/3 study. We are now in the process of discussing with regulatory bodies around the world how to proceed and what to do next with the data which we have.
Okay. So if all goes well, when will your drug be generally available in the marketplace in the United States?
We would not be able to tell unless we have had the discussion, which just is in the process of starting. Probably a little bit later, I can provide more information. At this point, it's too early to tell.
So we're probably 2 to 5 years away.
I don't want to give any estimate.
We don't know. Okay.
We don't know.
But you have something that's promising. What is likely the underlying mechanism of the Alzheimer's pathology? Here on this show, we have discussed a little bit about the APO2, 3, and 4 genes and their role in the pathology or progression of the disease. What is your take on that?
This is a very good point to naming these genes, because these genes are key for identifying patients who are declining quicker or get the Alzheimer indication of earlier age. And so it's very severe. And we have actually data with Blarcamesine showing that there is a very good response for also those patients which have the APOE4 status, which is basically the risk gene for Alzheimer. And we know that the antibodies, for example, the monoclonal antibodies, which are injectable, don't respond to these APOE4 carriers and also have more severe side effects with these APOE4 carriers.
Mm-hmm.
The mechanism is independent of that, and it's because it's restoring autophagy, what I refer to the self-eating, the recycling of the neural cells. And if this is impaired, which is not only in the pathology itself, but also it's a continuation decline of these capabilities of autophagy as we age. That means the earlier you would take the treatment, the earlier you would be able potentially to halt or reverse the sliding scale of getting into this pathology.
Right. There are a couple of FDA drugs approved now for the treatment of Alzheimer's, including Eli Lilly's donanemab.
That's correct. Yeah.
The Eli Lilly's donanemab. They're actually in trials now to prove or disprove whether or not administering it to patients before the onset of Alzheimer's symptoms will delay or prevent Alzheimer's symptoms from appearing. Do you think that's a reasonable approach?
The experiment is a reasonable approach, and we already demonstrated it in animals with our drug Blarcamesine. Animals who get pre-treated, like a prevention, they never developed cognitive impairment at all. While those who did not get the treatment, placebo, they get the impairment after they get Alzheimer's pathology. So that was already demonstrated in animals. So this approach is a very good idea to do this. And we think that could be something also could be trialed also with our drug as well, with Blarcamesine in humans eventually. I think that's a very good approach. Yes.
Good. Now we're going to take a short break and hear an Alzheimer's tip from Dr. Craig Curtis.
We now know that Alzheimer's disease starts about 20 years before the symptoms, with the buildup of a toxic protein called amyloid. And so scientists have been on a quest to remove amyloid to see how it affects the disease. The medicine that was recently FDA approved to slow down symptoms in people with Alzheimer's disease memory problems works by removing this substance called amyloid out of the brain. And now we're attempting to use those medicines to actually remove amyloid before someone develops symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss and forgetfulness.
So that's in that 20-year period before the disease is obvious?
That's right. Scientists now call it Alzheimer's pathologic change versus Alzheimer's disease. And we're saving the term Alzheimer's disease for when someone is actually experiencing symptoms due to Alzheimer's disease.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the Villages community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
Thank you, Dr. Curtis. Now, is your new drug a potential remedy because it will allow brain cells to regenerate?
We believe that given that autophagy is not a spontaneous impairment, but is evolved over time, that it will be consistent with the stage where you're at. And we have showed in our trial that we have data. You delay taking the drug by 1 year, then you will not be able to get the benefit for those compared to who started this drug a year earlier. So you lose significant time, and we measured that right about almost 20 months, a little bit less than 20 months. Quality of life you are losing if you are delaying taking the drug by too much time.
So if I understand you right, this drug is more of a preventative than a cure.
I think the prevention is really the key because you keep the system running. It can keep the engine running. And so the engine to clean up, if you like, the circuit clean up through your brain, keep them running and keep it tidy so they never accumulate the toxic elements which could then lead to Alzheimer's disease. And that's the best way to describe it. And when you are never clean up your house or your room or street, the more accumulates, and it's harder to get rid of the trash. So the earlier you start, the better you're off. That's the best way to describe it.
And so your drug would be a lifelong treatment, or is it something that you would have a 1 or 2 year course of, and then that was all you need for the rest of your life?
No, you would probably need it your lifelong. And as you said, we have the data. The earlier you start, the better off you will be. But you would take it every day. Some people take aspirin every day, so it's a bit like maybe the analogy.
But aspirin is very cheap. I can't imagine your drug being as inexpensive as aspirin.
We believe the pricing, we should not talk about it now, but the pricing would be determined fair, but it definitely will be less expensive and more affordable than the monoclonal antibodies, which are out right now.
What else could you do to prolong life without Alzheimer's or
I think there are many things you can do since the disease correlates with aging. Everything you can do to get more vitality in your system. That means doing long walks, taking up sport activity, swimming, or other exercises. That is very beneficial. But also on the side of the nutrition, helping your system to less eat processed foods and more cooking yourself at home, or more a diet with less red meat or less processed meat products. All of this in combination with the vegetables and other things like beans and nuts. These are all features which can help in addition to being also happy. It's a correlation that some people with more depressive symptoms or tendency of depression are more likely to get Alzheimer's disease. So being a happy person, happy fellow is always a good argument.
Good.
And helps as well.
So that you're indicating that the Mediterranean diet or the Mind diet would be good for people.
I think so.
Oh, good. So let me go one step further. What do you think of a pure vegetarian diet? Is that a positive extension of the Mind diet and your Mediterranean diet, or is that going too far of an extreme?
I think that we know that we can eat everything, and that's what the human being is. So I would not make yourself a limit to certain features. I would just increase the variety. That would be my recommendation here. Nobody should be taken away to deserve a nice chicken or a nice piece of meat or other things which are once in a while nice to have. I would just make the variety the key point and not a limitation on a certain direction of a diet.
Good. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'd like to add that I think it's important to voice your opinion and speak up. I think patients have a right to speak up if they are in a situation where they need something urgently, and patients have the right to get something if the drug is safe. and does not cause ARIA, like Blarcamesine is doing, to ask for it and speak with the physicians and let people know about it, that this is in the pipeline. And this could be then helping to accelerate how to get to market.
Do you have any known side effects of your drug right now?
The only side effects which was above the average was really one side effect, which was dizziness. And that was, however, mitigatable or was reduced significantly by a longer titration. So in our trial, we had a very short titration period where this dizziness showed up more than 10%. And once we titrated it over a longer period, slower, then this dizziness was less than 10%. It's the analogy of if you go to a bar and you order 5 shots and you drink them all sequentially within 5 minutes or less, you will probably get a quicker headache than if you take a cocktail and drink it over the entire duration of the evening. But the good news is that dizziness is a sign it goes into the brain, and that's what you want because it's a brain disease. So you want to have an effect actually. So it's actually not a bad sign. But the good thing about this was those dizziness levels were very mild and only a short duration, a few days.
So if our
5 to
listeners
11 days.
want to follow up and follow the progress of your drug through its testing period, how do they do that?
You can always follow up on our website, which is www.anavex.com, anavex.com, and that is the best way to follow us.
Good. Thank you very much, Dr. Missling, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
This is Mike Roth. Listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project to bring knowledge, inspiration, and things you need to know about the villages and the people living here. Be sure to hit the follow button to get the newest episode each week. Or you can hit the purple supporter box. Even a small donation of $3 to $10 a month makes a big difference. And you can cancel your subscription at any time. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout-out for supporters Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, Dwayne Romick, Paul Sorgan, and Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. The way our show grows is with your help. Text your friends about this show. If you enjoyed listening, or just tell your friends, we thank everyone for listening. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2025, all rights reserved.